John was in the middle of Imagine when he suddenly stopped singing, pointed to someone in the crowd, and said 5 words that sent a shiver through his band. "Get that man backstage, please, now." It was Saturday, March 22nd, 1975 at Madison Square Garden in New York City. John was performing his second show of the evening to a sold-out crowd of 20,000 expectant fans. The concert was going exactly as planned. The band was tight. John was in good voice, his distinctive vocals cutting through the arena, and the audience was electric with a shared sense of purpose and energy. John, dressed in a simple denim jacket over a black t-shirt, his iconic round spectacles perched on his nose, moved across the stage with the earnest, almost vulnerable presence that had made him a global voice. He'd already performed Instant Karma, Working Class Hero, and now he was deep into Imagine, one of his most profound anthems. But something was about to happen that would stop the entire show and reveal a truth that nobody in that arena could have anticipated. John was singing the bridge of Imagine when his eyes scanned the audience, as they always did during performances. He loved making eye contact with fans, making them feel seen and connected. But this time, his gaze stopped on someone in the middle section. Row 47. The man was older, maybe in his 60s, wearing a worn military jacket that looked like it had seen better days. His face was weathered and tired, but there was something about him that made John stop mid-verse. The band noticed immediately that something was wrong. John had never stopped Imagine before. The music began to fade as the musicians looked at each other in confusion. John walked to the edge of the stage, squinting into the lights to get a better look at the man. His hand was shaking slightly as he raised it to point directly at the veteran in row 47. "Stop the music," John said into his microphone, his voice carrying an unusual urgency. The band went completely silent. 20,000 people held their breath, wondering what was happening. John's head of security immediately moved toward the stage, thinking there was a threat. But John wasn't looking scared. He was looking like he'd seen a ghost, or perhaps a long-lost echo. "Listen," John said, his voice carrying through the arena's speakers. "I need you to bring that man backstage, right now." The man in the military jacket, row 47, middle section. The security chief looked confused but nodded. Security didn't question John when he used that tone of voice. The audience started murmuring, completely confused about what was happening. Was this part of the show? Was someone in danger? The man in row 47 looked equally shocked, pointing at himself as if to say, "Me?" "Yes, you," John said directly to him. "Please, I need to talk to you right now." The man's name was Robert Mitchell, and he was a 62-year-old Vietnam War veteran from Tennessee. He'd saved for 2 years to afford tickets to see John perform, and even then, row 47 was all he could manage on his disability pension. Robert had no idea why John Lennon was pointing at him. His heart was racing as security guards made their way to his seat. The people around him were staring, some with concern, others with curiosity. "Sir, Mr. Lennon would like to speak with you," the security chief said professionally but kindly. "Would you please come with us?" Robert stood on shaky legs. His daughter, who had driven him to New York for this special trip, grabbed his arm. "Dad, what's happening?" "I don't know, sweetie," Robert whispered. "I honestly don't know." As security escorted Robert through the crowd toward the backstage area, John stood on stage in complete silence. The audience was getting restless, a confused buzz filling the air, some even concerned, but John didn't care about any of that. He turned to the audience and did something unprecedented. "Listen, everyone," John said, his voice thick with emotion. "I need you to bear with me for a few minutes. Something very important just happened, and I need to take care of it. This won't take long, but I promise you, it's more important than any song I could sing tonight." Then John walked off stage, leaving 20,000 confused fans and a band that had no idea what to do. When Robert was brought backstage, John was pacing back and forth, his denim jacket catching the backstage lights. The moment he saw Robert up close, tears immediately filled his eyes. "It's you," John whispered. "After all these years, it's really you." Robert looked at John in complete confusion. "Mr. Lennon, I think there's been some mistake. I don't know you. I've never met you before." John stepped closer, staring at Robert's face with an intensity that made everyone in the room uncomfortable. Then his eyes moved to the military jacket Robert was wearing, specifically to the name tape that was barely visible on the chest. The name tape read Mitchell Robert, 101st Airborne. But there was something else, a faded unit patch and a small notation that most people wouldn't notice. John noticed. "July 18th, 1969, John said quietly. "Firebase Ripcord, Northern Vietnam." Robert's face went completely white. "How do you know about that?" John's hands were shaking as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a worn, faded photograph. It was a picture of a young soldier, maybe 19 years old, standing in front of a bunker in Vietnam. The soldier was holding a guitar and smiling despite the obvious hardship around him. "This is my cousin Marcus," John said, his voice breaking. "Marcus Riley. He died in Vietnam in 1969. But before he died, he sent me this photograph with a letter." Robert stared at the photograph and suddenly his legs gave out. Security caught him before he fell, helping him into a chair. "I know who you are," Robert said, tears streaming down his weathered face. "Dear God, I know exactly who you are." John sat down across from Robert, and what came next was a story that had haunted both men for 6 years, though neither knew the other carried the same burden. "Marcus wrote me a letter 3 days before he died," John explained. "He told me about a mission that went wrong, about how his unit was ambushed and pinned down. He said they would have all died if it wasn't for one sergeant who ran through enemy fire to get them air support." Robert was crying openly now. "Marcus was the kindest kid I ever met in that hellhole. He used to play guitar and sing your songs to keep our spirits up. He told everyone his cousin was John Lennon, but nobody believed him. He told me about you," John continued. "He said there was a sergeant named Mitchell who saved his life 3 times. He said you were the bravest man he had ever known. And he said that if he didn't make it home, I should find you and thank you for giving him a few more days to live." John couldn't finish the sentence. Marcus had died 4 days after writing that letter, killed by a sniper while on patrol. "I tried to find you," John said desperately. "After Marcus died, I tried everything. I contacted the military, hired private investigators, spent thousands of dollars trying to locate Sergeant Robert Mitchell from the 101st Airborne. But there are hundreds of Robert Mitchells, and the military wouldn't give me information because of privacy rules." Robert wiped his eyes with his worn jacket sleeve. "I came home in 1970, got discharged with a Purple Heart and a leg full of shrapnel. I've been living in a small town in Tennessee ever since, working odd jobs when my leg allows it. I never told anyone about the war. It's too painful." Marcus's last letter to me said one more thing, John continued. He said, "If anything happens to me, please thank Sergeant Mitchell. Tell him that the few extra days he gave me, it allowed me to write home one more time, to tell my mama I love her, and to play one more song under the stars. That's why I've been looking for you. I made a promise to my cousin." John looked at Robert's military jacket again, studying it more carefully. "That's his jacket, isn't it?" "That's Marcus's jacket." Robert nodded slowly. "After Marcus died, the unit collected his personal effects to send home, but his jacket was in my bunker because he'd left it there during a card game the night before he died. When they were packing up his belongings, I asked if I could keep the jacket. It was against regulations, but the commanding officer let me. I've worn it ever since. It's my way of keeping him with me." That's when John noticed something he'd missed before. On the inside of the jacket's collar, barely visible, were words written in faded ink. "Property of Marcus Riley. If found, please return to my cousin John in Liverpool." John broke down completely. His security team had never seen him cry like this. John stood up and did something that shocked everyone in the room. He took off his iconic round spectacles, the ones he wore almost constantly, the ones that had become as much a part of his image as his songs, and handed them to Robert. "These glasses have been with me through everything," John said, his voice thick. "They've seen the world. They've seen the dreams I sing about. But Marcus gave me something more valuable than any possession could ever be. He gave me a promise to keep, a reason to fight for peace, for healing. This is my way of saying thank you. Not just for Marcus, but for every bloody soul who got caught in that senseless war, and for everyone still fighting to heal from it." Robert tried to protest, but John wouldn't hear it. "You saved my cousin's life multiple times. You gave him a few more precious days, and you've carried his memory with you for 6 years in the form of that jacket. Please take these." When John walked back on stage 25 minutes later, he wasn't alone. Robert Mitchell was with him, still wearing Marcus's jacket, now with John's glasses carefully held in his hands. The audience had been patient but confused. When they saw John return with an elderly veteran, the arena erupted in applause, though nobody knew why yet. John walked to the microphone with his arm around Robert's shoulders. When the applause died down, John told the entire story. He told them about Marcus, about Vietnam, about Robert's bravery, and about the jacket that had brought them together after 6 years of searching. By the time John finished talking, there wasn't a dry eye in the arena. 20,000 people stood and applauded Robert Mitchell for 5 solid minutes. Many were veterans themselves, others had family who served, and some were just moved by the story of love, loss, and the quiet heroism of a man caught in the machinery of war. John then did something he'd never done before. He started playing Give Peace a Chance slowly, reverently. Then he segued into Working Class Hero. And finally, Imagine Sorry once more, dedicating the set to Robert and all those who served. As John sang, Robert stood at attention, tears streaming down his face, wearing his old military jacket and holding John's glasses. And somewhere in that music, something healed in both of them. The quiet grief John carried for his cousin and the profound burden of every soldier who didn't make it home. After the concert, John made another life-changing decision. He established the Marcus Riley Peace and Veteran Support Fund, dedicated to helping Vietnam veterans who were struggling with physical injuries, PTSD, and the difficult transition back to civilian life, focusing on mental health and reconciliation. Robert Mitchell became the fund's first beneficiary, receiving medical care for his leg, financial assistance, and most importantly, the counseling he needed to process his war trauma. John gave me back my life, Robert said in an interview 6 months later. Not just through the fun, but by reminding me that what I did in Vietnam mattered, that Marcus's life mattered, that all of our sacrifices mattered, and that there's always hope for peace. John continued to perform, but something had changed. He started every show by asking if there were any veterans in the audience, and every show he would dedicate Imagine to them. The round glasses that John gave to Robert Mitchell that night are now on display at the Marcus Riley Peace and Veteran Support Fund headquarters in New York. Beside them is Marcus's military jacket with the faded inscription about John. Robert Mitchell lived until 2003, passing away peacefully at the age of 90. He never missed a John Lennon concert when John performed in New York, always sitting in row 47 as a tribute to the night that changed everything. And John kept his promise to his cousin Marcus. He found Sergeant Mitchell and thanked him, not just with words, but with actions that helped countless veterans and amplified the call for peace in the years that followed. The story of John, Marcus, and Robert reminds us that sometimes the people we're looking for are looking for us too. That grief and gratitude can coexist, that promises made to the dying should be kept, and that redemption and peace can happen in the most unexpected places. John stopped his concert because he recognized a jacket that his cousin had worn in Vietnam. But really, he stopped because he recognized an opportunity to honor a promise, heal an old wound, and remind everyone in that arena that fame means nothing if you don't use it to amplify the voices of the real heroes, the quiet sufferers, and the relentless dreamers of a better world. Robert Mitchell went to that concert hoping to hear good music. Instead, he found closure for trauma he'd carried for decades. He found gratitude for sacrifices that had felt invisible, and he found peace in knowing that Marcus Riley's memory lived on, not just in a faded jacket, but in the heart of every soul who heard his story, and in every note that sang for peace.